Islamic Dad here. I'm going to do a video on a model or framework to view narcissism through. And, as you may have noticed with some of my other videos, I'm a big fan of trying to find different models in which to put the disorder of narcissism in and approach it from different perspectives, because at least for me, I've found it very insightful, and it's helped me kind of get an insight to narcissism and people with narcissism in a manner that I wouldn't if I had just simply stuck to the evil robot model of narcissism that I think we typically approach the disorder with. So the one way that I wanted to approach this, and I don't know if this is something that I just stumbled upon briefly once, or if it's something that I had maybe heard in a comment and wanted to take it further. But it's the idea of approaching narcissism as pure projection. Now, again, this is almost like the opposite of the evil robot in a way. So, we'll just start with, like, say, the narcissist is going about their life and they come across someone who's, attractive, and still, the typical approach for the narcissist as far as like what makes a good target: someone that is everything that they wish they could be, everything that they can never be. That means someone who's a giver, someone who's empathetic, someone who, has connections with, others. I would argue that, people that are the victims of narcissistic relationships, that they tend to have friends, with like strong, deep ties, and, a cohesive family relationship with others in their family. Whereas, again, like, I can only speak from my own experience, but the narcissists in my life, their friendships were very surface level. They didn't have any like deep friendships. It was always just kind of people they've known, and for some of them, if they knew them a long time, they mistook that for a deep friendship. But there was no like emotional connection there. Same thing with the family. My late, most recent, the covert narcissist, she barely spoke with her family, really. And when she did, it was just kind of this performance that she would, be part of. And, it's like, oh, a holiday, yay, let's eat dinner and then hop on an airplane and go home. Like, there was no emotional connection there. So back to my point. So, the narcissist is still going to continue to pick their targets, from the typical perspective that we've known with other models. But where I think it gets different right off the bat was, like, say, the love bombing phase. Now, with the evil robot, model, it's 100% manipulation. The narcissist, at that point is, Professor Moriarty from like the Sherlock Holmes novels, just this evil genius mastermind with all these elaborate plans. So with the approaching it differently, and instead of approaching it as just pure projection, it's that the narcissist actually feels that attraction. And the reason that they're love bombing you and trying to get that back from you, in the form of, mirroring or, something similar, is because they're projecting their feelings upon you. And it's not necessarily from a point of manipulation, they're being authentic. Like, they're like, oh my God, I've found the one. They really think that you are the one that is going to fill the void in them. That you're the one that, as long as they're with you, they're going to wake up in the morning, look at you, and be like, oh, I'm a whole person because, I see this person, this is my ideal. Like, almost like this is the person I want to be. And I'm, the next best thing is I'm with them. And so they're approaching you with, that intensity, because that's what they're feeling. They're feeling that intense emotion because in their mind and in their hearts, you're their dream. You are everything that they've ever wanted, everything that they've never been able to have, and you're real. You're right there. You're right in front of them. And then, that's kind of the projection, what they're projecting onto you during the love bomb phase. And then as soon as they get a pain, a little ping, a little bit of doubt in their mind, that's when things change. It's not because you've changed or done anything or not met some expectations. It is because they've, suddenly, that little bit of guilt and shame that had been submerged during the love bombing phase, a little bit pops up at that point, just after, say, 3 months, 6 months, however long. And, they try to push it back down, but it's, it's there. And so they, maybe instead of being like 100%, there with the love, the emotional connection, maybe even mirroring the giving to the best that they can, maybe that drops from 100% to 99%. And, maybe that 99% after like a week, a month, it drops to 95%. And the narcissist is struggling because they're, on some level, they're aware of what's happening, and they're, they might be trying to fight it. Like, they might still want to, project that 95% of idealized love, onto you. But, there's that 5%, that shame, that guilt, that doubt. And, try as they may, that shame and that guilt and that doubt's just kind of growing day by day. And as time goes on, and it sounds like, every relationship's, different. I'll speak to my most recent, that, maybe the first 2 or 3 years, there's still enough of that, love and emotional connection there, that's the majority of what they can project onto you. And so you don't have that many fights. You don't have that many problems. And when you do, there's still a chance to address them and maybe in the short term find a solution and, kind of move a little bit, back to baseline. But the problem is, time is time, and ultimately that guilt and shame inside the narcissist is going to continue to grow. And finally it reaches that tipping point where instead of being mostly, able to project love and what they are, they're kind of imitating, externally, is emotional connection, that it tips the other way. And at that point, they are now feeling mostly, let's say 51% shame, guilt, doubt, and they're disappointed with themselves. I mean, and that shows because they're projecting that disappointment, that frustration, maybe even to some extent like disgust with themselves, onto you. And so, this is, I think, the phase in which the narcissist is kind of notorious for projecting their behaviors, fears, and problems onto you. So once you've passed that 50, that tipping point at like 50-50 to where it goes mostly negative with the shame, the guilt, and the doubt, at that point, if the narcissist is like talking to other people on their phone, or having like a work wife or a work husband or something like that, they're going to then project that doubt onto you and say, who are you talking to on your phone? And why are you late today? Normally you get home at 5:30 and it's 5:45. And and again, the projection, kind of that I felt the most in this last relationship was the you're insecure, you're codependent, and you're needy, and that type of thing, which it sounds like is extremely common. And as time goes on and that 50% becomes, it's now 70% negative or 80% negative, at that point, it's just bad. And I think that, at that point, I don't know where people want to put like the line, even if you could say there is one within a relationship with a narcissist. But, I think I may have mentioned in a previous video, you reach a point where, you can't ignore it any longer. It becomes what's commonly called narcissistic abuse or emotional abuse. At that point, the gaslighting, the deflection, the, word salad, the, bizarre behavior, the projecting and accusations, and the neglect, the, stonewalling, the silent treatment, the, basically trying to, push, you feel like they're just trying to push you out of the relationship. At that point, that's what they're doing externally to you. But again, like they're projecting their own feelings. I mean, the guilt, the shame have welled back up. So they are no longer able to, keep that down with kind of this idealized version that they had created of, of their partner. And so at that point, the doubt and their own disappointment with themselves, their own disgust with themselves, their own feelings of shame, they're projecting those outward onto you because they can't deal with them, and they refuse to take ownership of them. And finally, it just goes, farther and farther to it, basically reaches a breaking point where either, the target leaves, or, from what I've heard, they discard. And I assume that if a narcissist were ever to be the one to choose to do the, final discard, it was because they have another supply already waiting for them. And so again, they're just simply projecting. And, to touch on something that I think, people have spoken at length about, which is like, okay, why is the narcissist, just so awful, like right there at the end, but also past the end? One thing that I've said about like my, covert narcissist, our relationship ended, and she did like the smear campaign, making up lies about me, doing all this other stuff. doing all this crazy stuff on social media. And I'm just like, that's a lot of energy. Why if someone's over you for real, why would they be coming back to you and making you the focus and spending all this time and energy on you, in a negative way? And again, going back to like the model of projection, it's because they're still hurting. I mean, they're still hurting about the relationship, but in a very different way. I mean, they're hurting because they, in their mind, they're like, oh my God, this is going to be like a Disney romance with the prince and the princess. And then it wasn't. And that infuriates me. They feel entitled to that, Disney romance or something like that. And so they're disappointed in themselves for not being able to have that, or, having the chance to create that with another person. And so they are taking all that disappointment, frustration and anger, and still focusing it on the target, even though the relationship has ended. It's just, in some way, like, that still bothers them. And, another part of the projection is that I've heard that, like, some narcissist will, do that, like, that negative focus and smear campaign after the relationship, almost as a way to reassure themselves that they made the right decision. Again, this is cuckoo crazy narcissist logic. I don't get it. But again, that's just what I've heard, that they do that so that they can be like, oh, it's a good thing that the relationship ended because they're bad and they're the villain. They're the villain. I'm the victim. And it's a good thing that the relationship ended because that way they can't emotionally abuse me. Again, in the narcissist mind, I think they believe that. I think they believe all the horrible stuff that they did to the target. I think that in their mind, they think on some level that happened to them. And so again, it's a way to just keep, externalizing the feelings that they do have towards the target after the end of the relationship, but also as a way to kind of, confirm their decision and reassure themselves, like, oh yeah, I did make the right decision because, they're the most evil person on the planet. So it's a good thing I'm not in a relationship with them anymore. So anyways, yeah, I just thought that it was an interesting model to approach looking at the narcissist, because again, it's kind of the opposite of the evil robot and their diabolical plans. Because just basically everything that the target experiences, all the way from the love bombing through to the end, is being felt by the narcissist on the inside. And they're just simply taking the feelings that they're experiencing and just projecting them outward. So, hopefully this video has been helpful. Thanks.